Hello. How's everybody doing? Once again, it is Mysterious Forces Live. It is Saturday, June 8th, 2019. And here we are. I have a guest scheduled, Dr. Simeon Hein. This will be his third appearance, but he's not queued up in my digital green room yet, so he may pop in at any time. Tonight's topic is kind of mind-bending, and I'm going to do my best until Dr. Hein shows up to kind of carry this topic. I'm going to try to sing and dance a little bit. I'll talk about something else to start off with to try to kill some time. And if he doesn't pop up, then I will attempt to tackle this issue by myself. It's not an issue. It's a topic. And just so that this isn't like a big tease, which is, I'll leave it alone. There was an article at newscientist.com. It's a UK journal. And in their subcategory of space, dated 3 days ago, June 5th, 2019, there's an article by Michael Brooks. And it's kind of a clunky title or a headline, in my opinion. It's "We've seen signs of a mirror image universe that is touching our own." And at first, the professor spotted this, and he saw this yesterday and said something about it. And then I saw that Dr. Hein had been talking about it on Twitter, and we kind of did a last-minute backroom deal of sorts. And he said he would come on. We would talk about this for an hour. So if he doesn't show up, it's going to look more like me talking about this for a half hour. Because I am certainly a layperson when it comes to physics and quantum physics. And I know that Dr. Hein is an expert in the field and much smarter than I am when it comes to this topic. So I'm hoping that he shows up and saves my ass. Newscientist.com. Before I get into it, I'll sing and dance for a couple minutes. I'll just say hello, and I'll look at the chat room, and I'll see who's here, and then we'll jump into it. I'll buy some time. We're buying time together. So here we are. I'm so glad we bought this time together. Will it get me sued? I hope not. This is completely off topic, but I discovered that David Gilmour of Pink Floyd fame has a podcast. And part of this podcast was, I think it kind of stands alone, but it was associated with this auction at Christie's. And I was shocked because Gilmour did his tour a couple of years ago. Thank God I saw him. And that's a whole other story of how I made it to the David Gilmour concert. Maybe I'll tell that story while killing time. Anyway, so, you know, the last Pink Floyd album has been made. Pink Floyd, as far as a creative entity, has been put to bed. And he did his last tour, and he toured around the world. He did a big concert at Pompeii, which kind of mirrored the very early on 1972 or 73 concert of Pink Floyd at Pompeii. I had that DVD, so... it was an interesting contrast. But anyway, if you know anything about David Gilmour or Pink Floyd, and maybe you don't, and maybe you don't give a damn, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. His main guitar, his number one axe, is the Black Strat. And one of his roadies actually made a photo book of the Black Strat some years ago. And while they were out on tour, his roadie took the Black Strat and put it up in various places with famous, iconic backgrounds or locations across the planet, and took a photograph of the Black Strat. So it's a book of this guitar in all of these different significant places. if you're a guitar geek and a music geek such as myself, this is like awesome. If you're not, you're like yawning. I get it. So anyway, the Black Strat has been played on, I think, every Pink Floyd album from the time he got it, where he picked it up at Manny's Guitar. I even know this shit by heart. I didn't have to study this. I didn't have to look this up. I came to the table with this knowledge. Gilmour, they were on tour, and their equipment got ripped off in New Orleans, and he had to get a guitar. They canceled kind of the rest of that tour, but he wound up at Manny's Guitars in New York City, 72, 73. And he bought this 1969 Black Strat, and I guess it was an off-the-rack model, just standard. And he loved this guitar, and he used it. And the first album it appeared on was Metal, which was kind of like that defining departure album. It was one album before Dark Side of the Moon, and the classic Pink Floyd sound as we know it started to develop on that album. And if you know anything about Pink Floyd, the song Echoes, which is all of side 2, was that kind of haunting, epic song. And so that's what you might know that by. Anyway, I couldn't believe Gilmour selling the Black Strat. He is selling his guitar collection, which kind of breaks my heart because it kind of sends a signal that he's done. But I mean, the guy's in his early to mid 70s. So anyway, there was estimated that the Black Strat would sell for $100,000 to $150,000. And there's a, I think it's a 59, if I'm not mistaken, Les Paul gold top. And he played the guitar solo on Another Brick in the Wall on that guitar. That one's going up for sale. Like, he's got all these guitars. And I don't know. I kind of wanted to cry when I saw that because I guess I don't want to acknowledge that David Gilmour is retiring and all that fabulous music is going to go away. But at least I got to see the last 2 Pink Floyd tours, and I got to see Gilmour's solo tour. And I'm going to tell the story. It's a kind of a weird, quirky story. And when I get to the end of it, if Dr. Hein is not here, I'm going to jump into the topic at hand. But so what happened was I was working in Southern California. David Gilmour's tour is announced. The album comes out. I buy myself a ticket, and I had not seen his show at the Hollywood Bowl. And here was Gilmour going to start this leg of the North American tour. He had done Canada, but he was going to start at the Hollywood Bowl and then work his way back across America, head east. Well, I was so happy to get a ticket to the show at the Hollywood Bowl, and it's a famous, iconic venue, of course, and nothing was going to be better than David Gilmour at the Hollywood Bowl. I figured massive celebrities would show up. Who knew what could happen at the Hollywood Bowl? So these tickets went on sale 9 months before the actual event. And I was working my job in Southern California, and the months ticked by, and I kept thinking, this is like having a baby, like this is literally taking 9 months, and then it's going to develop. So in the interim, just before the concert, maybe a couple of months or so, I had moved to Arizona. I moved to the Arizona. I was going to say the Phoenix area here in Arizona. And I traveled back to California to go catch the show. So I went and I hung out with my old roommate, and I was going to run to Target and get some stuff. And I was, really excited about the concert being that night. And when I woke up, I wasn't feeling very well at all. And I was fighting through it. I was like, I can't get sick and, not see this show. So I made my way to Target. And I'm in there shopping, and this feeling came over me like I was going to pass out. Like I got real weak, and I thought I was going to lose consciousness. Everything started buzzing and moving, and I started to panic. I don't know if I was having a stroke or what was going on, but something serious was going on. I actually went up to the security guard, and I said, "You need to call an ambulance. Something is wrong with me, and I don't know what it is." Here comes the ambulance. They scoop me up. My blood pressure is wacky. A lot of my vitals are wacky. And I wound up getting admitted to the hospital, and it was an effect of one of the HRT medications had cranked my potassium up to 6.6, which is deadly. It almost stopped my heart. I almost keeled over in Target. So, needless to say, I'm laying in my hospital bed that afternoon, and I know that I'm going to miss the David Gilmour show. And I was talking to my daughter on the phone. I was crying in the hospital room, not because I was ill, but I was crying because the David Gilmour concert. I had waited 9 whole months for this, and I was unquestionably too ill to go to this concert. And I was going to take a friend of mine. She was going to drive. Her name is Brooke, and she was going to drive, and I was giving her a ticket for free for driving. That was the trade-off. Well, I was obviously not going, so I gave my ticket away to my friend and gave it to her. And those two went to the concert together, and they saw David Gilmour at the Hollywood Bowl. And I was crushed. I was sick, and I was crushed. But someone, my daughter, came to my rescue. She felt very sorry for me. And he was doing 2 nights at the Hollywood Bowl. This was a ticket to the first night. So I missed the first night at the Hollywood Bowl. The second night happens the next night. My daughter comes to my rescue, goes online, buys me a ticket to see Gilmour. He was playing a 3rd show in Inglewood at the LA Forum. So I got a ticket to the Forum. And the Forum had just been remodeled, and is a fantastic venue. If you ever have a half-ass reason to go see a concert at the LA Forum, please go. Do not loiter in the neighborhood around the LA Forum, but go to the LA Forum and see a show. And after the show, get the hell out of there and go grab a meal somewhere else. It's I'm going to call it like it is. It's LA, and that's a sketchy neighborhood. It's sketchy around there. So not a place where tourists should go goofing off around the LA Forum. So anyway, it panned out that I got to see him inside, and that was the saving grace of that. So thank God my daughter bought me the David Gilmour ticket. How's that for something that you had no interest in or any reason to listen to? But that's the end of that, and we will get on to the chosen topic. I see Super Sleuth. Hello, Mency 4. Sergeant Sups, Out of Mind. Hello. Thank you all for being here. Once again, these Friday and Saturday nights are getting crowded. I thought Jimmy Church was going to start something. I saw some kind of post by CW Chanter, and I think there's starting to be competition for time slots. Which is okay, but I've been in this time slot for a while now, but I've been doing Friday and Saturday nights since the beginning, and we're coming up on a year. We're coming up on 10 months of this show. Anyway, and I'm going to have to dip out of the chat room, and I'll come back and I'll look, but I've got to look at parts of this article because quite honestly, this is like, I conceptually understand quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff like that. I've watched plenty of videos and documentaries about the topic, but maybe sometimes on a practical scale, I don't quite fully comprehend. That's why, because I do this show, I have this book, 30-Second Quantum Theory. It's actually a great way to look things up. This is a good series of books. And I have a 30-second physics. So sometimes I peruse those books and get a little bit of detail. But newscientist.com really lucked out because what they did, I think there should be a link that the professor put in, a link to this article. You will be disappointed if you're seriously into this topic because unless you have a subscription, you cannot read the whole article. And I found a second article, but it referred back to this first one, and this is the original one. So once again, this is newscientist.com under their space section, and it was published June 5th, 2019 by Michael Brooks. I said that's the top of the show, but now that we're on to the topic, I just want to refresh everyone's memory. So anyway, I went ahead and I subscribed to New Scientist so I could read the whole article and discuss this in an intelligent way. And since I will only be able to kind of hit the high points and maybe ask some interesting questions that we can talk about, and I'll look in the chat room. If Dr. Hein doesn't make it into the show tonight, I'll reschedule with him and have him come back, and we will talk about this, because I think this would be a much better show with someone that actually has a PhD to discuss it. And so we will come back to this, but I am certainly not going to let you down, and I'm going to give you the highlights of this. This article concerns the work of Leah Broussard, and she's with the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, and that's might be where the Oak Ridge boys are from. But if you study much of science history or history at all, you'll know that part of the first atomic bombs were some of that work was compartmentalized down at Oak Ridge. And I've actually been to the physics museum down at Oak Ridge, but I was a kid. I mean, it was probably 30 years ago. And if the place exists at all, it's probably been completely renovated since I was there as a kid. But I remember they had big samples of gold, and you could pick up gold inside this box and find out how heavy gold is. And there were lots of interesting physics experiments, and you could use these. You could put your hand inside these gloves and inside of a box, like what you've seen on these shows where they handle something really dangerous, like plutonium or some kind of a virus, and you're working inside of an enclosed thing, and so you could manipulate this thing. And I actually was able to pick up a match with it and strike a match. So this made a tremendous impression on me, and really helped feed my interest in science. Even though I was a kid, I kind of kept that going forward. So what's going on here with this topic is that there is some work, and it's not just Leah Broussard herself. There are some Chinese scientists that had done some work before, and people kind of looked over the data. And this is about the rate at which neutrinos decay. And they have established that neutrinos decay, what the period of time it takes for some neutrinos to decay is like 4 minutes and 28 seconds. And I'm going to look. So I don't want there to be too much space. I want to keep rolling with this. They ran the experiment a different way, and they found out that there was a 9-minute gap. I know what it was. There is an experiment called the bottle experiment, where they trapped neutrinos in this magnetic field, and they call it a bottle. And so when they measured the neutrino decay within that bottle, it was like 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Well, when they studied neutrinos in a beam of light, it took 9 seconds longer for the neutrinos to decay. And this prompted lots of speculation that maybe they were screwing up the parameters of the experiment. They reran the experiment, they double-checked themselves, and they found out that, by golly, neutrinos decay at a different rate using these two different methods. And they tried to figure out what could be the cause of that. Well, it turns out that this theory of a mirror universe came about, which says that as the Big Bang happened and this neutrino decay happened, I just don't really, I have to be fair to you, the audience, and I don't think that I can willy-nilly quote this to you. So I'm going to quote the article, which is okay. I would rather quote the article and have it be a little clunky than me to kind of misspeak. So in terms of this mirror universe, it says, after decades of tantalizing hints about its existence, the first experiments aiming to go through the looking glass are about to get underway. Finding such a mirror universe would not only transform our view of reality, but could also answer questions about our own universe that have puzzled scientists for decades. The implications would be astounding, says Broussard. It says physicists have found new worlds before. In 1928, Paul Dirac realized that the equations of the quantum mechanics allowed for the existence of particles with properties beyond those anyone had seen before. He predicted that a whole new family of them was lurking in the universe, made up of particles identical to those we knew, but with the opposite electrical charges. That's the key to this door here. Similar particles, opposite electrical charges. And what is this? Here's the quiz. That's antimatter. This hidden world of antimatter doubles the number of fundamental particles known in the universe. And if you follow physics or science at all, you know that this mystery of dark matter is one of the biggest mysteries of all. Well, here's what's interesting. In the 1970s, U.S. astronomer Vera Rubin observed the same effect across a range of galaxies and clusters. Today, we think that dark matter causing this extra pull outnumbers regular matter 5-1. But we have never found this missing stuff, despite decades of dedicated direct and indirect searches. So, we know that we can measure dark matter at a 5-1 mass to the physical matter that we see and interact with in this universe. So that's when antimatter entered the mainstream of science. And in 1956, Chinese physicists Sung Dao Li and Chen Ning Yang made a remarkable prediction about the way physics works. And it was about the fundamental physical processes must obey certain physical laws. And so that was kind of the beginning of that back in the 50s, but it wasn't a very well-developed idea. Parity is one of the principles involved in this. And they're saying that the concept of a mirror matter world didn't find favor at the time, but faced a number of intractable problems fundamental to particle physics. Researchers such as Broussard and Baranzani have begun to embrace it again. In fact, says Baranzani, we may already have seen signs of its existence. What you say? We've already seen signs of this mirror universe? Ah, it's intriguing, isn't it? It's awesome. Okay, most clearly they believe its fingerprints can be glimpsed in the behavior of the neutron, one of the three particles atoms break down into. Over time, neutrons outside an atomic nucleus decay into the other two, electrons and protons. In the process of beta decay, for decades, we've been trying to work out exactly how long these so-called free neutrons live before they decay. And so, yeah, here's where the numbers come in. I was totally wrong. See, there's a good reason to read the article. There are broadly two ways of measuring the lifetime of a free neutron, by bottle and by beam. The bottle experiment is fairly straightforward. You use a weak magnetic field to herd neutrons into what is called a bottle trap. Then you wait a certain amount of time before counting on how many neutrons are left. And according to this method, the neutron lives for an average of 14 minutes and 39 seconds. And I was saying neutrinos, wasn't I? And it's a neutron. See, where's the PhD guy? The beam experiment, by contrast, counts the number of protons that emerge from a beam of neutrons channeled out of a nuclear reactor. Each proton can only appear as a result of a decaying neutron. Pay close attention. This is where it gets crazy, Twilight Zone. Using calculations based on the beam intensity, this method sets the neutron lifetime at 14 seconds. And there's a problem. These two measurements should be the same, says Baranzani. Okay, so at first the physicists thought that the extra 9 seconds could be put down to experimental error. We touched on that. And here's how this would work on a mechanical level. I hope you're asking that question to yourself. The mirror world could be the culprit if it exists. A key feature of these models, says Baranzani, and she's Broussard's research partner, is that neutrons oscillate back and forth between the two worlds. When passing through a magnetic field, the oscillation probability increases, says Baranzani. The jaw-dropping suggestion is that neutrons are only a part-time resident of our universe. I'm going to say that twice. The jaw-dropping suggestion is that neutrons are only a part-time resident of our universe. The rest of their time is spent in parallel plane of reality, where any proton they emit would go undetected. If 1 in 100 neutrons swapped into the mirror world before emitting a proton, that would explain the longer measured neutron lifetime in the magnetic fields of beam experiments. It's a very natural explanation, they say. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Guess what rate that happens at? 5 to 1. The exact same ratio of antimatter to matter that we observe in the physical universe. The exact same ratio, 5 to 1. There's the key, okay? It's even more compelling when you learn about the amount of mirror matter that should exist. In order to be consistent with our models of early universe evolution, the mirror sector must have been much cooler than our own. Too much heat and some mirror matter would have leaked across the divide, increasing the gravitational attraction between particles in our own universe and taking it down a different historical path. That temperature difference, in turn, would have made it much easier for particles to cross over into the mirror universe, oscillating out of our own world for good. I'm going to read that line twice. That temperature difference, in turn, would have made it much easier for particles to cross over into this mirror universe, oscillating out of our own world for good. The best developed mirror models suggest 5 mirror particles for every regular particle, 5 to 1 ratio, exactly the prescription given by our cosmological measurements of the ratio of dark to quote-unquote normal matter. So I will now put down the article, and that's the meat of this article. And so now I'll toss out some of my suggestions, some of my questions, and I'll look in the chat room and we'll see where we end up with this. So, you know, I've been going through this kind of agnosticism as of late, which I mentioned before. And, you know, the more I think about it, the more a mystery consciousness seems to be to us scientifically. We really don't have a firm grip on consciousness or gravity, to be quite honest with you. And I have speculated openly on this show that paranormal phenomena that we witness or experience may have a basis in science based on quantum mechanics, quantum physics, how this universe works. And what the article went on to say was that this mirror world, everything would be exactly the same, exactly in the same ratios, but backwards. And because the ratio of matter is 5 to 1, and we have life here in this manifest universe, that everything, there's going to be 5 times more of it in this mirror universe. So there are 5 times more matter to create life in that mirror universe. So think about a universe that's populated on a 5 to 1 ratio to this universe. Think about having a 5 to 1 ratio of material available. And this is where my mind kind of bends and twists, because it's hard for me to really kind of comprehend that. I don't know if I can really imagine living in this universe and saying, suddenly there's 5 times more matter here. I don't know what that really means. And if anyone does, put it in the chat. But I don't know. I don't really know what that means. Does that mean that matter in that universe would be more dense? Or would it be more spread out evenly, more like background radiation, perhaps? I don't know, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. So, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I think that these are clues to what we experience with remote viewing, so-called ghosts, and of course the UFO phenomena. I think this could play a big part of that. You know, seeing crafts, or if indeed there are aliens, beings that might seem to have magical powers, quote unquote, in the same way that if we went back 200 years ago, the smartphone would look like magic, right? So I'm not literally meaning magic. I'm just talking about a higher level of technology that we may not be able to understand. But at least we have technology and can have some perspective and look at our own trace of civilization and realize the progress we've made. At least understand the concept that high level technology for one culture in a different time period can look like pure magic to another culture. And I know that there's something else about that, but I forget what that is. But I've heard people toss that out. But that's the obvious point of this. And I think that telepathy, if it exists, if aliens can telepathically communicate with us, can they go through walls? Can they traverse vast amounts of space and time in a way that we can't comprehend because we're kind of trapped by the laws of physics as we know them at this time in this universe? And I guess that's why, when I had R and Ra on, that's where this 25% of woo lives for me and helps maintain this bubble of agnosticism that I have, because I see there is a scientific possibility for strange phenomena that we can't explain that might look magical or supernatural to us. It might appear metaphysical. But at some point, in some place, this might fit neatly into the box of science and cause and effect as we know it. And maybe this interacts with our consciousness. And I wonder if, I don't know, if you went to a universe where there was 5 times more matter than there is here, if that did create different physical structures, would that energy be played out in a different way? Like, would that manifest itself as psychic energy or through consciousness? Would that be perhaps the gateway to literally extrasensory perceptions? And I know that's an old school term, but I really can't think of a better one at this point to use for that. And this is kind of like where I'm kind of at the end of my chain in the terms of, a dog at the end of a leash. Like, I think I'm at the limit of what I can possibly understand or articulate about this without having someone smarter than myself come on here and lay out some different properties. And as the professor suggested before we went on air, talk about the standard model of physics and how this might differentiate from that. And now I'm going to look in the chat room. Let's see. Sergeant Sups, I believe we are part of the larger consciousness. Our brain somehow makes it difficult for us to access the larger consciousness. I can see exactly how that would work. The professor, of course, says an iPhone 88 would look like alien technology. Yeah, it sure as hell would. Would anyone have ever imagined that you would hold a tablet that would be so thin and that when you touched a glass screen and you spread your fingers apart that it would zoom in or zoom out? And that's some Star Trek shit, right? I mean, that's what we saw in Star Trek: The Next Generation then, with small tablets and going through, and that looked like I saw that even in the mid to late 80s when STNG came on. It was like, yeah, right, they got a glass tablet with a book in it, right? Holy shit, somebody at Apple, Steve Jobs, was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. UFO Gandalf. Let's see, I'm looking for questions. Does that mean there are anti-electrons, anti-protons, etc.? Need Doc here for my lack of knowledge of the standard model. You and me both. I see a link in there. No, the forum is not torn down. They refurbished the forum inside and out. All new acoustics, all new seats, everything. The LA forum has been rebuilt. You can see I'm moving backwards in the conversation, right? Someone joking about dry heat. Let's see. I don't really see any questions. But, when I saw this article, it just fascinated me. And I think that this is big news. I think that this kind of a discovery, part of what's going on is Broussard and her partner are going to be setting up experiments down at Oak Ridge to coincide with these other experiments that were done elsewhere. And they're going to test the hypotheses, and they're going to see if they can extract some new data or new findings from it. And I think this is as big as the Tic Tac UFO. For me as a science geek, this might even be more profound than the Tic Tac, in the way that we can't really possibly explain the Tic Tac, and maybe we have to understand this level of quantum interaction, this mirror universe, this explanation for antimatter. Perhaps we need to tackle that first before we can ever comprehend a Tic Tac UFO, or what it does, or where it came from, or how it's intelligently controlled. And that's why, in my opinion, this shit looks like magic to us. I just think it's levels of technology that are beyond our understanding because of our limited grasp of physics at this time. Don't get me wrong, we certainly understand physics much more now than we did 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and obviously 1,000 years ago. But we have a long way to go. The lifespan of the universe is very long, and hopefully we will exist long enough to be able to unravel these mysteries. And perhaps this is the key to technology that will allow us to travel amongst the stars. And perhaps we won't be trapped by the speed limit of the speed of light. You know, perhaps this does open up access to traveling vast distances of space and time. And really, there's a lot of times that I firmly believe that that's going to be the future of humanity, and that the way we're going to survive is to get away from this planet. That's a scary fucking thought. Then we'll evolve in space, and we'll turn into the Greys, and we'll come back through time travel and try to recollect DNA so that we can regain our humanity, right? All right. Well, thank you for indulging me. I'm not going to torture this topic anymore, because I don't think with my limited knowledge of physics that I can say anything worthwhile and justify keeping you hanging on my every word. How's that for transparency? Besides, Saturday night is crowded, and I have a feeling other shows are going on anyway. And quite honestly, I have some things to do, because we're going to make a little trip just slightly out of town later tonight, and we're going to enjoy some casino action. So I will track down Dr. Simeon Hein. I'm so sorry. I don't know where the snafu happened, but we'll rectify this, and I'll schedule him, and we will come back, and we'll go back over this topic, and we'll go back over this topic with a guy that's got a PhD and can articulate these principles much better than I can. It's the happy music. It's kind of peeking into the red. I want to say hi to Jimmy Pearson, Explaining Esoterica, Kelly Farmer, C.W. Chanter, The Professor, and you for watching. And if you haven't already done it, like and subscribe. And if you can, share these videos. That also helps. And I don't know if we're getting scared about the YouTube platform. I'm a little chinky on it, so I don't know what's going on with Facebook, and I hope that these types of shows aren't going to get demonetized and taken off the air. But tune in next week. I will have some guests next week, and we'll have some compelling shows and great topics once again. Thank you so much for being here. This is Mysterious Forces Live. Thank you, everybody. Good night, and poof.